Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Drozda, and I am here on a live stream. Welcome to my woodworking shop, and welcome to my new adventure in digital stuff live stream. Uh, Hopefully, you're watching me either on Facebook or YouTube, and hopefully, my audio is working well. So good. And oh, good. We've got some people here watching me. Yay. Thank you, Scott, for showing up. And Hodgepodge, whoever that is. Good to see you. Wood woman. Yes, got to have more wood women out there in the world. Cool. Yeah, so uh, I'm planning to talk about tool handles today, and I I want to hear from all of you about what you'd like me to talk about or show. I've got an array of handles, and I wanted to talk a little bit about uh, just the whole philosophy behind tools and handles. Oh, Glenn, good to see you from YouTube. Yeah. All right. And we've got some other people here. I'm having a little bit of awkwardness with the comment situation. Good to see you, John. Good to see you, Philip. Thank you all for joining me here. I'm not going to be able to keep up with everything. Oh, Alfred up here said hello and good to see you. Oh, that's the wrong one. You see, I am Miss Awkward here. uh, all right. So if you have a question, enter it in the comments, either Facebook or YouTube, and I will do what I can to answer them. To start off with, what I would like to open with is I make and sell tools, and the tools that I have are always sold without handles. So I've got, tools like this with a round shank, or tools with a rectangular tang. And I hear people comment, they feel like they are forced to buy a handle. And yeah, I understand how that feels. And so I want to start off with my side of the situation. Why do I offer unhandled tools? And the reason is because, well, a couple of things. One is it allows me to ship the tools easier and cheaper, because shipping something that's 2 feet long versus something that's a foot long, big difference. And the other thing is that it'd be kind of a waste of my time to put some kind of generic handle, spend the time and money doing it on every tool, and have 90% of the people pound them off because they like something else. Tool handles are such a personal decision to make. And, I know for myself, I like certain kinds of handles, and I don't like certain other ones. I like certain length of handle and all that. And you all probably remember the days where every tool we bought came with a handle like this, same length, no matter what tool it is, 1/4 inch gouge, 5/8 gouge, same handle. And that's just a handle where the tool is pounded in, usually not glued. And so I, as a tool seller, have decided not to do generic handles. And there are quite a few options for handles. And I'd like to go through a few of these options. And then I want to talk about the easiest option, or the best option, which is make your own handles. You see this array of handles here. I've put some manufactured handles in, but you can also see a few that I've made. And if I get lots of questions, I'll be answering questions. If you'd like to see me actually make some chips, I'm ready to make for you this kind of a handle. Now, this is the handle that you would make without having to really buy much of anything at all. Need a piece of wood and a lathe that you can turn between centers and a drill in a Jacob's chuck or somehow to hold a drill so you can drill a hole in the end. And so you are not required to buy a handle. You can make one. And it's a great beginner wood turning project. It's a great warm up any day. Yeah, and tools without handles do take up less space. They in your drawer, I mean, and you can have one handle used for several tools. And so let's talk about the handles. There are a couple of different options, manufactured handles that are all ready to go, and a lot of them have the set screws. This one is the Stuart Batty system, where it's a really nice carbon fiber handle, and the thing that it requires is this bolster glued on to every tool, so it screws together. And so that's another way to do it. Now, I don't happen to own any of those quick disconnect ones, like Wood Woman says she's been using the robust handle, the robust collet handle, and that uses some actual machine shop type collets. So you can put a different collet size in the same handle and use it for a number of different size tools. Most of the handles will only have the ability to take one size of tools. This one's got a 3/8 hole in it. That's all it'll do. This one, it's a 1/2 inch 13 mil hole, and that's all it'll do. This one here has, I've lost the cap. It has a cap on the end, so you can put shot in it to make it heavier if you want to. I personally, and here we are. A personal taste for handles varies so much between people. I know people who like long, heavy, shot weighted handles. I personally like lightweight and short wood handles, and that's personal preference. So where was I here? I was talking about the different ways to mount the tool in the handle. And this system here from Wood Turning Tool Store, you can put different tool sizes in the same handle by using this different size nose that screws on and off, and they're available in a bunch of sizes. So that's another option. As far as personal preference goes, I just said I like wood handles, and some people like a padded handle. This is a non-squishy vinyl handle, so that one like this, if you don't heat your shop, they can get pretty cold in the winter. And I guess if the converse of that is if you're in a really hot climate, they tend to be cooler to pick up in the summer too, unless they're in the window and getting hot. So this one now is squishy foam. So it's a different sort of grip. And all of this, there isn't a better or worse. It's all your personal preference. Another thing that I happen to very much like is a tool that won't roll around on the table. And that's why I tend to make these. This is octagonal in cross section. If you can see that, it actually isn't turned at all, except it turned a little bit on the ends. It's an octagonal table saw job, and I've put these handle adapters in. Now this is kind of like option in between buying your own handle and making one from scratch and gluing the tool in. This is a set screw available in different diameters. And what you do is you make a handle and you drill a hole for the shank of the adapter and epoxy it in. And that, for me, that's my preference for handles, because I really like it that I can have, even though maybe I do have a handle for every tool, I might have some handles that don't have tools in them. And when I'm setting up for a job, I'll take the tools I'm going to use today and I'll put all of them in handles, even though maybe they aren't all in handles all the time. And another thing I really like about these, let me show you on a shorter one, it'll be kind of easier to see. One thing I really like about these set screw type handles, I'm looking for a tool I do not see here. So we'll go with this one. With this tool, in this kind of a handle, I can adjust. If I drill a long enough hole, see, I made this handle and I drilled the hole. And if I drill a long hole, this one doesn't have a long hole. Okay, what about this one? Usually I try to drill a long hole, but sometimes I am lazy and didn't quite do it. I can push the tool in more or bring it out more. And you see how I wish I drilled a longer hole there. Another thing I can do is, since I travel to teach quite a bit, is I can put the tool edge into the handle. This one's got a nice long hole for that example. And this way I can sharpen them before I leave and they stay sharp. And what about, yeah, good question, Todd. What about storing your tool inside the handle or having a double-ended tool? Yeah, well, this set screw thing here, if I had a double-ended, like a one-way master cut gouge, I could have two tools in one. The only thing I've heard of where you can store the tools inside the handle is that set that Doug Thompson makes. So I really haven't seen a lot of that. But what I wanted to say was, see, I can push the tool way in. And since I like a really short tool to use, when this tool is new and it's got a lot of flute, I can push it in there. And then as it gets older and older, I can pull it out more and more. Yeah, the Jimmy Clues quick release is good. It's a cam lock, not a collet. So it works kind of like the collets in that cam lock size will only accept one tool diameter. It won't, you can't, put different diameters in. You can kind of cheat with these, and I could take my 1/2 inch hole and I could put my 3/8 tool in there, and it would tighten down on there and hold the tool in place. It wouldn't be centered in the handle, but when you're turning, you'll never know. Another good thing about these set screw type handles is that they allow me to put a rectangular tang into my homemade handle. So when you have a tool that has a tang like this, what are you going to do to mount it in a handle? Your homemade wood handle, drilling a round hole is easy. And yeah, one thing I could do is put the tool in there and then fill in around it with epoxy. Or one thing I did in the past was I would fill in around it. I would make a piece of wood, a dowel that fits that hole. And then I'd bandsaw off some pieces on the side of it and stick them in next to the tang and epoxy it in. And that works. But with the set screw ones, the set screws will tighten down on the top of the the rectangular shank tang, and it rests against the bottom of the hole. And this may look like it's not supported well, but it actually seems to be supported very well. I've done this a lot. If you take your tools in and out of the handles and you're using an aluminum adapter, and the tang on the tool is not relieved a little bit on the corners, these corners, at least so I hear, these corners can dig into the aluminum hole over time. I haven't had that problem, but I've heard people say that. So a good thing to do is to just put a little bevel on here, and that will keep it from digging in. So yeah, I hear some people saying that they want to see me turn something. But I would like to address Woodwoman's comment here. Handleless tools are easier to sharpen. Yes, and that right there is probably the best reason to have a tool handle that you can take your tools in and out of. And when I have a tool like, say this one, it's a short, lightweight tool with a lightweight handle, made by Gouges du Plessis, by the way. I can sharpen that without taking the tool out of the handle. But you get some big, long, heavy tool, and yeah, it's way easier to sharpen if you don't have all that handle length and weight to deal with. So yeah. And Daryl wants to know, have I turned off-center tool handles? And maybe you saw one in that bunch of tools I had there. Yes, I have. And David has, this is David's style of, it's a 2-axis turning. So you can see the cross section of it is kind of a football shape. That's a lot of fun. It falls under the heading of spending more time than a person really needs to making a tool handle. But when you have a tool handle made out of pink ivory or cocobolo, or I have some that are curly maple. Like, these are kind of curly. They've seen some abuse. I find that using something nice that I made is so much more rewarding than just having something I bought. So Daryl is asking about the ferrules, and I've got a couple of tool handle ferrules that I've brought out here to show, and they are, I'm going to get an assortment of things here ready to talk about, because a ferrule's a good thing to have. A ferrule is something that keeps the wood from splitting when you just have your tool glued into the bare wood. These I'm going to call ferrules also. It's a ferrule that glues into the wood and holds the tool. And this is that handle adapter I was talking about. And they're available in, that was a 1/2 inch. Here's a 3/8. Here's a 1/4 inch. Oh, Don. Yeah. This is a great comment. David Nittman used to do that too. He used to use nylon cord and wrap it around here where that metal piece was. And that's enough. Cord reinforced with super glue is how David Nittman did it. That's a way to keep the wood from splitting basically at the very end. So yeah, so this kind of ferrule allows you to make your wood handle still have the tool removable. And I have these in several sizes: 1/4 inch, 3/8, 1/2 inch, and 5/8, which you don't have out here. These are aluminum. This is another product. I believe they're made by Michael Hosluck. Here's one with his brand on it. And this is the same exact idea. They're steel though, so they're going to not score from the tang being in them. And and they weigh a lot. Well, to me, I don't think that's an advantage. I'd rather have lightweight stuff, but some people like them heavy. So there you are. I do want to mention, if you're using this sort of thing and you're planning to glue it into a wooden handle, I like epoxy for that. And the epoxy won't stick to the metal unless you sand the bonding surface, and which I've done here. These would need to be sanded, just not to take all the gold iridite off or the anodizing off, but just to scratch it so the epoxy has something to bite with. So, Ben rushed his dinner to get here. Well, thank you for coming to join us, Ben. I'm flattered that you'd rush your dinner, but crooked pasta, I'll bet it tastes just as good. Okay, so that is the kind of ferrule that you can glue into the handle and remove the handle. But the other thing is, what about this sort of handle? We're talking about one that you don't have to buy really much of anything, but you do want not to just glue the tool right into the bare wood, because the theory is that the tool can split the wood if you're cutting aggressively. So traditionally, a little piece of metal tubing was put around the end and glued on. You can buy these. Here's one that I believe I got from Craft Supplies USA. It came already cut to length, ready to go. I would recommend sanding the inside again for the epoxy. This stuff is brass tubing that you can buy in the lamp parts section of a hardware store. And this is brass thin-walled tubing. That's what I use to make this ferrule here. And this stuff is plumbing pipe. And you can see that uneven cut. That was cut on the bandsaw. If you want a nice, even, square cut, a tubing cutter like this is a better option. And because it'll score around and eventually cut the tube with a square end. Downside of that is that, I don't know if you can see this here, and get zoomed in a little more, and you can see how it rolls a burr over into the inside of the tube, which is not good for fitting it over your tool handle. So what I'm going to do is either use my deburring tool here, or use a rat tail file, a round file, and I'm going to just smooth out the burr so that the bore of my pipe is smooth inside, and that'll help it to fit over the wood and glue in better. Now, another thing a person can do for ferrules on their tool handles. Oh, Sandy, I just saw your comment there. Picked me over another well-known turner. Thank you very much. I'm flattered that you're here, and welcome. Welcome. Okay, let me get this comment up so we can all read it. on Forged in Fire, a knife making show where they'd heat up the tang and drive it into the handle. I would guess that that will work with a wooden handle and a square-ish tang. Try it. Let me know how it goes. That'll be an interesting one. I haven't done that. I have carved out the round hole to be a rectangular one. I have ground my rectangular tangs down to a round, but I have not actually um, tried to open up the hole with fire. And so Don, good point. Oh, that wasn't the one I wanted. Hi, Gary. Yeah, comments. You can finish turn brass and copper ferrules or aluminum ones if you get some aluminum tubing, and there's some aluminum thin wall tubing available too. Sometimes at hardware stores, it's a marine product. That's what Lyle Jameson uses on his laser, on his hollowing rigs. And you can cut non-ferrous metal with your wood turning tools. I have done it. It can be as safe as cutting anything else with tools on a wood lathe. You will need to protect your eyes, please, because a metal particle in your eye is way more serious than a piece of wood in your eye. So, yes, do be safe about it, but non-ferrous metal. And some people have told me they've turned steel on their wood lathe with wood turning tools. I don't really recommend that. I haven't had much luck with it. Maybe with carbide, but it takes a lot more force to turn steel. So non-ferrous metal, yeah. And that would be, let's say, a way that you could take this rough bandsaw end and let it stick out a bit and turn it down. Oh, Rob is mentioning something about the wood handle. You could glue up a wood handle that fit your rectangular tang, and his idea here, you take the two halves, two pieces of wood, and if you're going to glue them, you you could route a groove first that'll fit the tang. The other thing you could do is take pieces of wood and little strips of wood and laminate the whole thing up so that you ended up with a groove to fit the rectangular tang. And that's another cool way to do it for a rectangular tang tool in your own handmade wood handle. So yeah, really good ideas, guys. Thanks a lot for bringing that up. I haven't actually done the glue up method, but I've seen some really awesome ones. If you use different kinds of wood, you get contrasting wood, and then when you turn the handle, it can look really nice. So I wanted to, before I get off the track of metal ferrules, my desk's a bit unstable here, sorry. I want to talk about cutting a piece of tubing on the bandsaw. First of all, you really need a very fine tooth blade to cut thin walled tubing safely. They say you need to have two teeth in the cut at all times. I've actually violated that rule a little bit, but what I want is a very fine tooth blade. I do not use the same bandsaw blade for cutting my ball blanks as I use for cutting something like this. The other thing is, if you're going to touch this round thing to your bandsaw blade, it is unsupported at the point of cut when you first touch the tube to your blade. And what it'll do is catch and run and spin it and throw it back out at you, and or it can grab your fingers and pull them into the blade. You really don't want that. So if you're going to cut round tubing or round anything on the bandsaw, it needs to be held in a clamp so that it can't turn. And I have successfully and safely done that, but I would not just take a piece of tubing and try to cut it on the bandsaw. That tubing cutter that I showed here, this is a plumbing and electrical device. This is probably the safest way to cut metal tubing, and it gives you a nice square edge as well. Okay, so Ben is suspecting that I have some hidden tools here to cut a square hole with a Holochisel Mortiser. Actually, I do. You know, I do have a Holochisel Mortiser. It's one of those things that's got a hollow chisel with a drill bit inside it, and you put it in your drill press, and it allows you to turn or to drill a square hole. I haven't done that with my turning tools because I fell in love with this idea where I've got my ferrule with the set screws, and I really like being able to take the tools out of the handle. So that's what I've started doing, and I haven't tried doing any hollow rectangular holes to glue a tool in. And Ed, this is another idea which I mentioned earlier. Split a dowel, buy a dowel that fits the hole you just drilled, or turn one that fits the hole you just drilled, and cut little slices off the dowel to fit in the hole around your tool. And Gordon, yes, another really good way to get a ferrule is plumbing nuts of various sizes and types. And here are some. These are, I think, the flare fittings or something. I drilled and tapped the hole there in these so that I could put my tool in and take it out again. But these kind of plumbing fittings, and here's another kind. It's got a hex nut exterior, which is nice, but some of them, I don't know if I have one sitting right here. I have also taken and turned away. Oh, here's one. No. I have turned away the hex with a bowl gouge, non-ferrous metal again. This is brass. It turns actually pretty nicely, and I've made a custom shape ferrule that way. Oh, here's a good question. Do I align the flute with the set screws, or upside down or sideways? And I guess my other question would be, does it matter? And what we're talking about there is if we have our bowl gouge in the handle, are we orienting it this way or perhaps this way so that the set screws are on the bottom, or anywhere else, and does it matter? I'm going to say that usually I put them up. There is no reason for that, and there is a good reason for having the screws down, and that is because they won't fill up with chips like they do when they're facing up, and gravity is really not your friend there because it gets dust in those hex sockets and makes it harder to get the screw out. It would be a good idea to have the screws down. I'm such a symmetry freak. I don't know. I just put them up. If you look at my tools, you'll see mostly they're up. Oh, and I just picked this one up. This is a parting tool. It's usually used this way up. And so I have it on the straight up there, or this one can be used either way. So it's either upside down or right side up. So I guess, the answer to that question is I don't do what makes the most sense. And, well, we all have our own ways, but I'm starting to rethink some of mine and perhaps using the tool with the set screws down. Would the set screws interfere with anything? They shouldn't, because the only thing that's ever on the tool rest is the metal of the tool. I'm never going to have the set screw is able to catch on the tool rest, for instance. So I don't see that as a safety consideration. What about just having them sideways or something? And, there's actually no reason why not. You could have them oriented pretty much anywhere and you have the same tool. I do kind of like it when I have a tool. Oh, I don't have anything sitting right here, but if I have a tool that, let's say, a round bar carbide cutter, where I want to know when the tool is inside of a piece of work, I'd like to know which way the cutter is up, because sometimes I will rotate the handle so that the tool is presented to the work at a negative angle. And I want to know that it's not at a past positive angle. So I will use having the set screws on the top as a way to orient which way up the insert is. And that's not on a lot of the tools I'm using, but yeah, I guess that's why I like it that way. Yeah, so what are we going to do here next? Anybody have a tool handle question or comment at the ready? I definitely invite you to make comments, ask me questions. You're on YouTube, some of you. You're on Facebook, some of you. Looks like we got a lot of people on YouTube right now. This is great. And I'm glad you found me. I was a little bit late to putting out notifications for any of this stuff. Ah, yes, double-ended gouges. The double-ended gouge has some advantages, and Ben's saying he's not a fan of them because they make the handle heavier. Yeah, and the reason I'm not a fan of them is I don't really like having to take the tool out of the handle and turn it around. And I've seen Stu Batty at his demos, and he'll have an assortment of different handles and an assortment of different tools, and he'll be all the time taking it. Oh, this handle's too short, and put a different one on, and that works. That works for him, and I'm a little bit less a fan of having to change the handle out. So I really like a handle for every tool that I'm working on with today. And here's my good friend David Drikhammer. Hello, hello, and hello to all of you guys who are just joining us or who've been here a while. Oh, yes. Daryl, thank you for that question. I don't really have a very good script here, so you guys prompt me, ask me what you want to know about. This is a great question. The tool handle length for different tools. And I definitely have some preferences for that, usually depending on what I'm going to do with them perhaps at the moment. I'm going to ask for a very short handle on anything that I use without much tool rest overhang. And when we had the tools that we would buy with the handle already on them, the handle was the same length no matter what the tool was. And that is not really the philosophy I would use. What I'm looking for is, if I'm looking for there to be a ratio of, let's say the tool rest is right here. I want 5 times the tool rest overhang. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to my hand on the handle. And that gives me enough leverage over this tool to counteract the forces that the wood is putting into it. And if I am using a really short tool rest overhang, like this is the tool I use for finials, and I like to have this tool not sticking out much. You know, I'm going to tighten it down with very little tool hanging out of the handle, because I'm always putting it on the tool rest with just a little bit overhanging. And I'm actually going to grip the tool up close to the ferrule. I have some finial gouge handles that are really only about 4 inches long, and it's just perfect. Everything past my hand is extra and wasted for the length of the tool handle. So a short handle like this on a finial gouge gives me better control of the tool, because I don't have a whole lot of handle out here overbalancing the tool over the tool rest. I like to have it be balanced on the tool rest and have my hand up close to the ferrule there. So when I'm not overhanging the tool rest very much, I want to have a short handle. And here's an example of a tool. This is a 3/8 10 mil diameter bowl gouge. And I use this as a bowl gouge, and it's a 3/8 diameter. It's probably really not going to be overhanging the tool rest much, because this tool is going to start chattering. The steel is not going to handle a lot of overhang very well. But I might have this tool in a really short handle like this one if I was using it up really close to the work. And I might have this tool, do I have one here? Yes, I might have this tool in a longer handle and stick more of the tool out of the handle if I was using it for more overhang. So it might depend on the job at hand. But a lot of the time, it just depends on the tool. Like this is a vortex tool. I'm never going to use this with any amount of tool rest overhang. So this tool, I always want, I think this is about a 5.5 or 6 inch. Well, we can measure it, can't we? Okay, so that's about 140 mil, which is about 5.5 inches. And that's a plenty of handle for a vortex tool. A really, really good question. The longer the tool rest overhang, the more length of handle I want, so that I get that 5-to-1 ratio of tool rest overhang to tool behind the tool rest, or the mechanical advantage that I get from my hand on the end of a tool further away from the tool rest. So if that makes any sense, that's my philosophy on that. Okay, so Stu's handles, we got a comment about that here from Ben. They have a really quick thread. I don't know as though it's 2 twists, but yeah, let's take a look at that one again. It, in fact, is a coarse thread. I'll get a little closer. It's probably a 1/2-13 thread. And so it will take fewer twists. And that's good. This also has a hex on here. They'll tend to tighten up too much for my old arthritic hands, and I need to use the wrench to get them off sometimes. The main reasons that while I love the handle stock, and that's this, let's get back over here. That's this fiberglass composite shape. It's a really nice shape. It doesn't roll around on your table or lathe bed. It's nice to hold. It's not aluminum, so it's not cold. I really like this stuff, but having to glue a bolster on every tool that's ever going to be used in one of these handles, I like to be able to use different handles, not just all my handles this system. Of course, if all your handles were this system, then that wouldn't be a big deal. Also, the bolster is heavy, and I've talked over and over again about how I don't like heavy handles. And yeah, well, if I okay, so this is a 5/8 diameter bowl gouge, 16 mil. If I am using this gouge to do some kind of hard, out of balance, rough piece of wood, then yeah, long and heavy is good on the handle. And I have a Stuart Batty handle with some steel shot in it for just that occasion. So when I talk about things I do and don't like, you have to remember a lot of it has to do with the kind of work that I do. And what do we have here from Dean? Ah, yes. The you have the Stuart Batty handles, but your all-time favorite is one you made yourself. Yes, I have to say the same. I do like Stu's handles. They are a bit expensive to get set up with, but you know, once you have them, you have a lot of versatility, and they're quite good. So yeah. Now I wanted to show you. I wanted to stress today that it is not necessary to buy handles. And one thing I'd like to do is a little bit of turning. I don't know how long this live stream is going to go. I guess it's just going to be as long as everybody's listening. But I want to show you how to make a wood handle. And we're going to say, let's make one here out of ash, which is a good wood for a handle. It's also something that I happen to be able to get for free because of the emerald ash borer. A lot of ash trees are coming down. A lot of them limbs break off. So let's say you want to buy a tool and you want to make a handle. Here's my method of doing it. Ah, yes. And Hashim, you make a very good point here about bowl turning and heavier handles offering more stabilization and control in this type of work. Yes, particularly since in bowl turning, you tend to have more tool wrist overhang. You tend to have, at least at the beginning, an out around piece of wood that you have to true up, and you're using a larger diameter tool. And, you know, like I mentioned about my 5/8 bowl gouge in the Stuart Batty handle. Yeah, I like a longer, heavier handle for that kind of work too. So very, very valid point that a lot of handle choice has to do with what kind of work you're doing. And I don't do a lot of bowls, but if I do a big bowl or a big hollow vessel, I am very likely to use a longer handle than I would use for, let's say, finials or small boxes. So I've got my piece of wood here, and this is a piece of ash, and I'm going to start by finding the center. And I'm using this center finder, the kind of center finder that goes off the corners of the piece. This is a Bandsaw blank. It's starting out about 1.5 inches square, and let's see, 1.5 inches or about 37 mil, and it is I don't remember how long. We'll just guesstimate. It's about 10 inches long. And I'm doing this, for example, this would be a good size handle for maybe a 3/8 bowl gouge or maybe a 1/8 inch parting tool. And I'm going to make it fit the parting tool. I know I have that parting tool over here. Here it is. So I'm going to make it fit this parting tool. This is an 1/8 inch wide, about 3 mil wide parting tool. It has a 1/2 inch shank. And if you look at the shank here, you can see that this is a Thompson. And what Doug does is he turns down the last 2 inches on size. When you're machining stuff, uh, metal stock almost always comes oversized. And that's so that the machinist can turn a nice finished trued up down to on size, is what they call it, meaning that's exactly our 1/2 inch or 0.500. You're able to get a trued up 1/2 inch diameter out of the stock. So the stock is oversized. Well, he does this because those collet type handles, collets or camlocks, typically aren't very forgiving of different diameters of tool. David, good question about the handles. Do I always use dry wood? I would, well, technically, I really don't think you have to use totally dry wood the same way that I would say that I want to use totally dry wood for my finial because I don't want it to warp, or for my box because I want the lid to be to still fit the same later on. So wet wood, totally wet wood, is going to shrink. If you glue, oh yes, and Rob is just saying what I was about to say. If you use totally wet wood and you glue a piece of metal into it, the wood's going to shrink as it dries. As it shrinks, the metal that's glued into it is not going to shrink. So that means that the wood could split. And that's, when you say totally dry, or you say kind of dry, you say wet wood. Well, there are variations in how wet is the wood really, or how dry. And let me get my tool rest here so I can set things up. The wood that I'm using for tool handles is going to be mostly dry. Air dried in my environment. Here I'm going to set my tool rest up. You can see that here. I'm setting my tool rest up to be, maybe you can see it better over here. To be just, no, you can't. How about over here? I'm setting the tool rest, we'll do it here, to be about 1/4 of an inch below center so that I can have the center of my gouge being approximately right on the center line of the piece of wood. And I'm putting it between centers. I've got a drive center in the headstock here, and this is a steb center with a retractable point. You see the point sticking out, but it's retracting. I just happen to like that kind of a center. And then on the tailstock, I've got a robust live center, and I'm just using this one because for a lot of this project, I want something that's a solid contact and isn't trying to retract or unretract. So Rob's point here is that less than 16% is a good choice. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I'm not going to say it's got to be 6% totally box lid dry, but probably shouldn't ought to be 30% because of that shrinkage factor. And the glue won't hold. Every time I've seen glue that didn't hold on a tool handle ferrule, it was because there was no roughed up area for the glue to stick to. And you see on this ferrule, I've put it between centers and sanded it with coarse grit to rough it up. If you just have a slick metal piece and you try to glue it with epoxy, the epoxy won't hold and it'll just come right out. So tool rust can also interfere with a glue joint. Yes. What I've seen most is that the epoxy didn't hold because it really doesn't bond chemically with metal. You have to have a mechanical bond, and you get that by roughing it up. One of the ways, roughing it up with sandpaper. Oh, okay, Woodwoman, you've got a good point. Should I drill the hole first? Well, I can. And if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that I have a YouTube on making a wood handle, and I drill it first while it's in the square, and I use the tool rest as a support. I bring the tool rest up against the piece of wood so that when I'm drilling, it won't rotate. I'm just doing it differently this time because I was making one last night and I thought, I showed that other way before, and you can do it either way is my point. You can do it either way. Right now I'm going to do it this way because it seemed to be good. If you do the hole first, you have the advantage of centering up on the hole and having everything else concentric with the hole, which is actually good. But it can be done either way. I'm doing it this way today. How do I keep the hole straight? Wait until I get to drilling the hole. But it usually comes out good enough. Now, what if the hole's not straight? What if the hole's not centered? Your tool doesn't care. Maybe you're offended because you're kind of symmetrical oriented like I am and you really like precision and everything. But the truth is, the tool is not going to work. It's still going to work. It's not going to be poor performance because it's off at an angle or not centered perfectly. So I'm going to start this project here with the blank, and I'm and here's a bit of a knot, right? So which end of the tool do I want that on? Well, I don't want it on the ferrule end because I'm more likely to get a crack because a knot is a little bit of a weak point. But it looks great, and it'll be nice on the end of the handle. So the ferrule goes on this end, and my hand's going to hold this end. Do I have a stub on my site? Okay, Daryl, I'm not really sure I understand your question here. So if you want to clarify there in the chat, and Hashim, you'll always center the rest to your tool center. Right. So having the tool, you're centering your tool rest to the tool, not the handle. And your hand's on the handle, but all the work is being done with the metal of the tool on the metal of the tool rest and the tip on the wood that you're working on. And where the handle is doesn't really matter. However, Ben brings up a good point. Some of us are just a little bit too symmetrically oriented and really like to have do I sell the steb drive on my website? No, I don't sell the steb centers. They have a drive and they have live centers and they have two different sizes of revolving center. And this is a revolving one for the tailstock. And they have three different sizes of headstock center. I am using the 1/2 inch one here. It's called 1/2 inch, even though it looks smaller. Packard Woodworks, Craft Supplies USA. I don't know where else. I got mine from Woodcraft one time, or not Woodcraft. Rockler was selling them for a while. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't actually sell those, but I do like them, and I can post some links after this is all over. Right now, I can't go searching for links and still my brain will explode. So, yeah. So yeah, there it's called a steb center, steb drive center. And they also have steb revolving centers. A little bit of history about that. The steb center was named for a guy named Gary Stebbins, who invented it in England, I believe. And he made them for a long time. And I believe the ones I have are actual steb centers. But then he sold the rights to it to Robert Sorby, the big tool company, some 10 or 15 years ago or something like that. And Sorby does a really nice job of making them. So that was a good move to sell to Sorby. And there are also knockoffs. And I'm really kind of not in favor of knockoffs in general. And often the quality's not quite there. But so no comment about the knockoffs. But I can vouch for the Sorbys. They're very good quality. All right, so I would like to rough down this piece, and when I put my face shield on, let's just see. Sometimes the audio goes to hell. What do you think about my audio? Does anybody want to please make a comment about if this is okay? Sometimes it gets a little louder when I put the face shield on, but I want to wear a face shield here, and I'm going to start with my lathe on 0. Good. Thank you very much, Alfred. And Hodgepodge. So I started the lathe with the speed control all the way down at 0, and I'm cranking it up slowly, and I'm going to make sure that it's tight between centers. And I did not tighten the tailstock ram, so I want to be able to reach over here and tighten the hand wheel and check to make sure it's tight. But I'm going to bring the speed all the way up to full speed, and I'm just going to round this down with my spindle roughing gouge and bevel rubbing cuts. And I can make a cut here going downhill and across, or I can, and here's what I'm doing that's a critical thing, is I'm going to be contacting the heel. Let's get over here. Contacting the heel and then raising the handle until I see chips over the top of the tool. And that's my bevel rubbing, bevel floating, bevel gliding cut. Rob says he does knockoffs of my finials. Well, that's not really quite the same thing, Rob, but you're welcome always to copy my finials or anything else I do. No problem. So I'm going to get, I'll just zoom in a tiny bit here. You can see this in the broad view. And this is another way to do it. What I'm doing is I've got my bevel in cutting contact with the piece, and I am moving my body side to side with my hand on my side, locking the tool down. And this is a nice stable way to rough down my cylinder. And when I get to close to a nice smooth cylinder, and I could use a skew for this also. Why do I choose one thing over another? Personal preference. What you're going to find in wood turning is that there are a dozen different ways and different tools to do every job. And why I would use one thing over another is just completely personal preference. So now I'd like to put my ferrule on, and I'm going to use this piece of brass here. We'll get over to the end where the ferrule's going to go and make a little mark here. The length of the ferrule. Put that where it's not going to fall in the chips. And I'm going to mark that by putting my pencil right where the line is and turning the lathe on for a second, and the lead makes a nice mark there. Make sure my tool rest is a good distance away from the work, and is also, I want plenty of tool rest off the end. I don't want to have my tool rest so that I might fall off the end of it making my cut. So that's just a safety thing. You don't always want to center your tool rest on the piece of wood. You want to make sure you have plenty. So Don is making an interesting comment. Not to use cherry for tool handles? I can't imagine why not. I've done it plenty. I've used all kinds of different wood for tool handles, and poplar, which is really soft and therefore lightweight, and I really wanted some light handles. And ash is kind of a standard thing. It's really resilient. They use it for axe handles and baseball bats and stuff. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I can't imagine a wood that would be unsuitable for a tool handle unless it had cross grain, so that the grain of the wood might break if you got a catch. Or, well, burl is probably not the greatest either for the same reason. You might want grain strength, straight grain wood. Okay. Thank you very much, Hodgepodge, for that. Yeah, the tip of the mic was on my skin because the face shield kind of smashed me. So now that I've got the roughing done, I'm okay without it. And what I want to do here is I want to put my ferrule, and that's not the one I wanted either, is it? Right. This is the one right here. And this is the one whose length I have scribed on there with the pencil. I'm going to put it on over the tailstock center. And yeah, cherry, if it didn't have any knots in it, I can't imagine why not. I really wouldn't want a knot right in the middle of a tool handle because it might break with a lot of cutting force. So I'm more concerned about structural issues in the wood than I am with the species of wood. Oh, and here we have Petro from Italy. Greetings. Yes, thank you for joining us today. This is cool. We've got a good international audience. All right, so now I have my, and I forgot to do something. Here I am getting to talking and messing around. And okay, so where did I get Rat Pick? I love that name. A good friend there. Let me get his comment up here. Where I get the brass from, this brass is sold in the lamp building department of a hardware store. It's tubing for making lamps in the old incandescent bulb days, probably, but it comes in different sizes. It's a thin wall tubing, easily cut with regular tools. Another place I get my brass from, I'm going to lock this caliper before I forget about that. Another place I get brass from is plumbing fittings of various and assorted kinds. And those come, it's already to length, so I don't have to turn it to length or cut it to length or anything. All right, so I just calipered the inside diameter of that brass piece, which is the little detail that I had neglected there before I put it on to the live center. And I'm going to have it sitting right there while the piece is turning, and I'll make sure I get that lined up there. Okay. Kind of harder to see the center going right back into the center. So now I'm going to zoom out a tad. And yes, ebony is a wonderful tool handle. This one here is an ebony tool handle, and yeah, having something luxurious and wonderful that you use every time you turn, it's great. I say the same thing for kitchen knives, and other utensils I use. Okay, Rat Pick is telling us all about how he got the name. I love it. I love it. So almost makes me want to change my name to Patrick so I could be Rat Pick. Thanks for the explanation there. All right, so where I am here is I've got the caliper set to the diameter I need this to be so I can slip that ferrule over it. Is this turned on a Rose engine? Yes. It's done by, or I don't know if it's Rose engine or a Holochisel ornamental, but yeah, Gorse Duplessis, if you've heard of him, he died a few years ago, and he was really into the ornamental, and he made this handle for me. His feeling was the beautiful piece of artwork should be something you use every day, and I just love having that handle. I don't take it traveling because I'm afraid I'll lose it. Okay, so I have now the parting tool that I'm making this handle for, and I got to find a handle for it. I've been musical handles all over the place here showing them, but I really want to use this tool now. Maybe we'll make the handle fit this bowl gouge, same shank size. I'll put the handle, and I don't need a lot sticking out, and I'm going to go and be a rebel today, and I'm putting the set screws on the side. Ooh. 1/8 inch wide 3mm parting tool, and what I'm going to do is I've still got the lathe on full speed, is I'm going to make a step on the end of the piece. You can see it better over here. Over here. Step on the end of the piece. And I'll put my caliper right there in the step. And I've got the parting tool in one hand. Here's how I'm holding this parting tool. I've got my hand, let's get that view here. I've got my hand holding it so that I've got a lot of contact with the tool, and that substitutes for the fact that I don't have two hands actually holding it. So I've got the parting tool in one hand, caliper in the other, and I'll turn until the caliper drops over the piece of wood. And now we'll see how close we are. So are there rules and guidelines for the best handle diameter? Great question. Yeah, my hand. And you'll find different people like different kinds of handle. Oh, and I will probably butcher your name. Oh, Lionel is your first name. Yes. Greetings. Thank you for joining from France. I love it. Guidelines for the tool diameter. This one is a particularly large diameter. The guy who designed it, Todd Raines, is a big guy. He's got big hands, and that fits him better than it fits me. I am a small person, And when I make a handle for myself, it's quite a bit smaller. There are some generic sizes. There are, well, like the commercially made handles in general are all kind of the same size range. This, I believe, on the squares is 1.25 inches. That's what I make my wooden ones to, or maybe this is a little under that. A little bit bigger. This is a Trent Bosch handle, aluminum with a vinyl grip. So when you're making your own handle, your guideline is, how does it feel to you? And while you're turning it, while you're turning the handle, you might want to check and see how it feels while you're shaping it. But right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit this ferrule, and I've still got a little ways to go there. So I'll take another little cut off of there, being careful that I don't, and you'll notice I've got a parting tool that's only cutting out to the end of the handle. I might have been tempted to take this wide parting tool and just make that little step there, but now I've got the potential to interfere with this bouncing brass piece, and it probably wouldn't, but I'm just not going to risk it. So let's see if I've got close. Okay, now that's really good. So we're going to now take that, I want a pretty tight fit here. I'm going to take that wide tool I just said I wasn't going to use on the very end of the piece, and I'm going to use it. Now this is a peeling cut. This is a great cut for removing wood in a hurry. Contact the heel and raise the handle until I see chips coming over the top of the edge. Now I'm going to push the tool straight into the wood, and as the diameter gets smaller, I'm going to have to raise the handle a little more, and I'm doing that in a fluid motion here until I get down close to that step I made. Let's look at that, not there, from here. I've got the heel touching first, raise the handle till I get chips, push in, and I'm raising the handle as I get to the smaller diameter. Now I'm probably going to need to tune this all the way up to where that step on the end is. And so what I'm going to do is raise the handle to where the tool is level and use it as a scraper here and scrape the surface down, because the peeling cut tends to do a really great job of getting the piece down to diameter fast, removing a lot of wood in a hurry. Oh, a captive ring could be useful on a carbide to let you know the handle is horizontal. Yeah, I suppose it could. And also for IDing your tool. Captive rings on a turning tool, now that's over the top. But of course, I have an ornamental turned one, so I can't say about over the top. I'm the over the top girl anyway. So that's a little bit tighter than I really want it to be. So we're going to take a little more off, even on the end. I'm using it as a scraper now, and I'm making sure I don't get that tool interfering with the brass. I'd like to have more room to move this off out of the way, but I'm working with a stock live center, and I've cut my brass piece to be shorter than the distance that the live center takes up, so that I can do this operation and feel good about it, safe about it. And I feel a little bit like that's going to be too much of a pain in the neck. So I'm taking off a little more wood here. And I should make this an entirely impractical handle. Yeah, well, there is always that opportunity, isn't there? I could make a 3-axis one with some decorations and things. A finial on the very end, that would be fun. All right, so I'm getting a more like it fit, but it's still needs a bit of tuning up. Why am I going to all this fuss? Well, actually, I'm a little bit distracted with reading the comments and everything. And if I was making production tool handles in my shop, I might be kind of going faster and not fiddling quite so much. But the truth of it is, if this fits nicely, and that's nicely, I can move it, slide it, then I really don't even need glue except to keep it from moving. And I might just take a center punch and punch a dimple in there, and that'll keep it from moving. The idea of the ferrule is to be a tight fit on the wood so that if the wood tries to split, the piece of metal will contain it. So that's what I want. And now I'm going to move my tool rest, and we'll zoom out here and get us nicely centered up so you can see the whole shaping being done. We might even be able to zoom in a tad here. Okay. And I can use a number of different tools on this. Oh, a finial handle for finial turning. I love it. Yeah, that's perfect. In fact, that would be perfect because the handle that I'm likely to use on a tool where I'm turning finials, that's going to be a real short one like this. And I grip it up here anyway, so a lot of the end is really not used. I could make a little bit of a finial on the end. Ah, that could be fun. That could be fun. Customize my finial turning tool. And that way also I'd know which tool it was when I was picking it up. So that's not the tool I want. I want my bowl gouge, 1/2-inch bowl gouge, the one that I'm making this handle for. I've got all these tools and all these handles, and I've been miscellaneous juggling them around. I'm going to put the 1/2-inch bowl gouge. That's a 13 mil, and it's measured. This particular bowl gouge is a Thompson, and it's a 40/40 grind, and it is measured by the diameter of the stock. And there are, as I understand it, 2 ways to measure a bowl gouge. One is the diameter of the stock here. And this one's going to be about 13 millimeters or a 1/2 inch. The other is the distance across the flute. And if you can see that, this is 3/8 of an inch across the flute, or about 10 mil. And the European or the English way of measuring bowl gouges would be to call this a 3/8 bowl gouge. This is a Thompson, and he measures his bowl gouges by, well, let me true this up again here. He measures his bowl gouges by the diameter of the steel stock they're made from. And even though the stock is a little oversized 1/2 inch, he calls it a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a bead shape here. And a lot like when you're turning pens and you've got, the bushing to turn down to, that's what I've got here. I'm going to turn down to that brass, which is in place. And then I'm going to turn a radius on the other end. Your choice here. I am going to plan on leaving the live center imprint on there. because it would allow me to mount this between centers again if I want to. And now I'll just give a little bit of shape to the tool. You notice I have not drilled the hole for the tool yet. I have not. This is my spindle roughing gouge. It has a nice edge to present to the wood, and no matter where on the edge I cut, I'm getting the same cut because this tool is, well, it didn't zoom in as much as I wanted to, did it? This tool is the Flute concentric with the outer shape. And that means that with the same bevel all the way around and the square end shape, no matter where I cut, I have the exact same tool presented to the wood. So I'm just going to make some shape here. My choice of what I do. And, you know, personally, I just make my tool handles straight, and I really like them not to roll around on the bench. So I use an octagonal handle, and I don't even really turn it except for the end and the ferrule end. So I'm done with the turning, and I'm going to slow the lathe down to about, I don't know, 200 RPM or something, and I'll sand it. And, you know, my choice of how much sanding I want to do, I'm starting with 180 grit here, and I could have done a little bit better job on the handle. And, you know, because I'm going to leave the center in place, I could come back and sand and finish this later if I want to. And I have my dust collector running, which I really can't do if I'm planning on doing it as a demo. So, okay, so now I want to drill the hole. And I could have drilled the hole at any point. Oh, Wood Woman, now I know who you are. Good to meet you, Sam, or good to see you. I mean, we've met on Facebook many times and probably in person too at SWAT or AAW. Good to have you here today. And keep those questions coming. Anyone who would like to ask me anything. I am going to drill the hole in the handle by putting a drill chuck on a Morse taper. Clean out my Morse tapers. In the headstock. Now, I don't have a drawbar to keep this chuck in the headstock. That would be the best way to do it. And that means that I would have a threaded rod that threaded into the end of that Morse taper and a nut on the other end of the hand wheel, so this can't come out. Right now, as it is, it could come out and fall out of the Morse taper. So I am going to be sure that I always have the tailstock up. I always have something between the tailstock and the drill chuck so that it can't go anywhere. Now let's get out as far out zoomed as I can here so we can see. Is that as far zoomed out as we go? Okay, and we'll go over here so you can see the whole thing. And I've got a little center mark from this live center. I'm going to put the center of the drill, and I'm using a twist drill is what this is called. It's a regular drill bit. It's not I don't have examples of what it isn't right here, but it's not a brad point or a Forstner. This kind of drill will center nicely in the divot made by the tailstock. And I want to stress here, Rob's saying, great idea to bring the tailstock up. It's not just a great idea, it's an essential safety thing. I do not want to have a drill chuck in the headstock that does not have a drawbar because it could fall out, like I said. So anyway, what's going to happen here is the tailstock keeps the piece on, keeps the drilling on center. Get all the way out here. And I did want to be that far out, didn't I? Yep. I don't need the tool rest, but I'm going to use it as something to kind of rest my hand on. And as I tighten the tailstock, it's going to feed into the drill bit. The drill is supposedly going to find that center mark, but it may not be perfect. Like we were talking about, Ben's going to freak out because it might not be perfect. If I drilled the hole first before I did any of the turning, including putting the ferrule on, then I would have the hole defining where the rest of the details were. But why didn't I do that? Because I wanted to have that little ferrule bit wherever it went. Ferrule, F-E-R-A-L in this case. Here it is. I wanted the ferrule to be on my tailstock so that I could do that fitting without having to take it out and put it back in and all that. And if I already had the hole drilled, I would have had to make some kind of a little fixture to accomplish that. So this was how I could do it using the tools I have. All right, I'm going to start the lathe with the speed control on 0. And then I'm going to gradually turn up the speed. I'm holding the handle with my hand, otherwise it'll start spinning from the drill bit. And as I advance the drill, I need more of a grip here. How am I going to get more of a grip? I got an idea. Now, I don't normally wear gloves when I'm turning. This is for grip here. I'll wear a rubber glove. And that'll help me hold on to it. And the drill is spinning very slowly. And I'm advancing the tailstock here. If I drill this, so Daryl says it's more efficient from headstock. Let's get that comment up there and see what it is you're referring to. More efficient from the headstock. Drilling from the headstock or fitting the ferrule from the headstock. Yeah, maybe I could have fit the ferrule from the headstock. You want to explain that question a little more so I understand, Daryl? That'd be great. And Hodgepodge has got should the tool rest be moved away to eliminate a potential pinch point? Maybe so. Maybe I should just get rid of the tool rest altogether. I was liking having a little support, but yeah, this will be good. This will be very good. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Now I can really get a grip on it. I was thinking I wanted to have a little rest for my hand, but actually, and I'm going to drill this hole. How far into the handle do I drill is Valerie's question. Now let's get over here. As far into the handle as I want the tool to go. And if I was using my, and I'm not going to keep pulling this out of here. I don't want to pull the chuck out of the Morse taper. So I turned the lathe off. I mean, I don't want to pull the chuck out of the Morse taper while it's spinning. So I turned the lathe off, and now I'm backing away the tailstock, and I'll get the drill out of the piece of wood. We've got some chips kind of clogging things up in there, and that happens. And these twist drills do evacuate the chips fairly well. Okay, so if I wanted my tool to be in one of these, then I would drill in, let me get back over here now. I would drill in at least this distance here, but I'm going to drill in even further because I really like it when I can adjust the length of tool that sticks out of the handle. Okay, so Daryl's comment should have been, oh, and what you're talking about was, why do I have the drill bit in the headstock instead of the tailstock? And let's see if I can explain this. Because we need to either turn the handle or turn the drill, because unless the two parts are spinning in relation to each other, no hole will be drilled. So if I had the drill in the tailstock, it won't spin, which means then, therefore, I have to spin the handle, which maybe means putting it in a chuck. And oh yeah, okay, let's say I drilled the hole first. I could have this in a chuck on the square, and I could put the drill in the tailstock, and that would work. What I'm doing here is, this is kind of the way I learned how to drill a hole in a tool handle, was to put the tailstock up and put the drill in the headstock, and that way I can just drill on in on an already finished handle. And that's like, in the old days, you could buy handles that were wood and they were already finished and they didn't have a hole in them, and you drill the hole you want for your tool. Okay, so I'm done with the drilling here, and I'm going to just take that drill out of the headstock, and let's say I'm all done sanding and finishing my tool handle to my satisfaction, and I'm ready to put the tool in. And to put the tool in, what I'm going to do, this is going to look like magic. Like you don't believe it's going to happen this way. And where's my tool I was going to put in there? I think I was going to use the parting tool. Well, let's just get this out of the handle it's in. I've drilled a 1/2 inch on size hole. The shank, the last 2 inches of the shank is 1/2 inch on size, and that'll slip right in, but it's not tight enough to use it. So I'm going to need to glue this tool in the handle, but the stock is a little oversized. And here's what they always used to do, is drill the hole a little undersized. And now watch this. Let's see, what I'm going to do is, just to show you what's happening, I'm going to put a piece of masking tape around the tool. So you see there's about 3/4 of an inch, 20 millimeters from the ferrule to the masking tape. And I am going to take a metal hammer and hold the tool with the end of the tool facing the floor and pound on the end of the handle. And check this out. It makes the tool go into the handle. This makes no sense, but it works. And so I can mount my tool in the handle without glue by doing this pounding method here. Another reason not to get carried away finishing the end of the handle if I'm going to pound on it like that. And then when I have the tool in as far as I want to, I can use the tool just as it is. I don't need any glue. And this also means that I can hammer it out again. And I'll usually just do that by hammering it out on one side and then on the other side. And eventually it'll come out. And this kind of boogers up the ferrule a little bit. So the classy way to do it would be to, I don't have one here, but to get a drift punch and use a drift. So Sam and Valerie are having a bit of a conversation here that's worth talking about. You drill from the tailstock, and if the wood is chucked, you can drill from the tailstock. So Woodwoman, how are you holding the wood, the handle, so that you can make the wood go round and around and the drill is stationary? If you want to let us know there. Newton's third law. Well, I'm not educated enough to know that, but I'll take it. The tool wasn't on the lathe. Well, this is a trick that the old British turners showed me, and what they do is use the same handle for numerous tools, and I had a quick way of knocking the tool out of the handle. I forget that, but I do know that you can pound on the end and it'll advance the tool up into the handle. And this is only if the tool is a little bit too big for the hole. If it's a perfect slip fit into the hole, you got to use some glue or set screws. So yeah. So perhaps a jam chuck, perhaps a chuck holding the end of the tool handle, and if you had the tool, if you had your drill in the tailstock and you had your handle, and we'll just go grab this one so I don't have to pound that out again, and you wanted to drill this hole this way, and you put a chuck on the lathe that would hold the tool, then the chuck may not center it up perfectly, but you take that center divot and you line it up on the point of the drill bit, just like I did when it was the other way around, and that'll keep the drill drilling straight-ish into the handle. So that works too. In other words, as always, there are so many different ways to do everything in wood turning that I can tell you, well, I'm offering you this way today. I'm also going to tell you that I did it a different way in my YouTube video. And there are other people have offered different ways yet that they've done it, and it's all good. Okay, so James has got a way. Put a box wrench over the tool and up against the ferrule. Oh, tap the wrench. Yeah, okay, that's great. And I actually have a box wrench right here. Oh, it's not an oversized box wrench. So we're going to have to use the one size fits all box wrench. And I can then, I'm not sure what the best way is to show this, but knock on the wrench. Problem is, I kind of need 3 hands to do this. And when I do knock a tool out of a handle, what I do is clamp it in a vise. And then I love that wrench trick, James. That's a really good one. Or a drift, but the wrench will put even less mark on the ferrule end of your handle. Yes, a chuck with pen jaws. Pen jaws being, no, that's not the one. Pen jaws being long, deep jaws. And you don't need a lot of pressure, you're right. And that would hold the handle. I'm such a fanatic about chuck marks that, okay, if I did that, I'd be putting the piece back in the lathe between centers after I drilled the hole and before I put the tool in, and I'd be sanding off the chuck marks, because I don't know, I'm kind of a fanatic about that. That's why I use jam chucks for everything. So the pounding thing works with putting a hammer handle or an axe handle on too, huh? Yeah, I could imagine it would. That means you hold your hammer upside down and you pound on the top, and the head will move up onto the handle. Yeah, love it. I always liked learning those weird little tricks that I may hardly ever or never use again, but it's fun. So, yeah, so that is pretty much what I wanted to show you today. And I can get talking about wood turning and get carried away forever. And I went a lot longer than I had planned today. But this was fun. I loved all the comments. Thank you very much. So, yeah. And now, fancy magnetic tool rest lights? What does that have to do with it? Here's what I needed to put in first. Use that trick to win a few bets against unknowing woodturners. Oh, yes, how devious. How very devious. Okay. And yeah, okay, Scott, seeing me in Tennessee. Oh, another place that y'all could see me is, where is what I'm looking for? I'm doing a demo this Saturday on making an owl box. And let's see if I have a picture of that owl box to show you. Here he is. It's a way to make spheres without a sphere jig, just using a jam chuck, and the same fixture is used to make the owl eyes, and then the beak is carved, and the body of the owl is a box, so you can see the joint line between the halves of the box. So I hope you'll think about joining me Saturday for that. It'll be fun. If you enjoyed this, then when I have a chance to really work and make a long project, it's even better. And I hope I'll see a lot of you here on Saturday. So, Saudi Arabia. Wow. Yeah. Nice to be able to watch wood turning while you're working. I love it. Thanks for joining us. Do I do any work with routers on the lathe? Not yet, but I sure hope I live a long time, because there is so much to do and so many ideas, and that's another good one for me to look for. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you all for being here with me. You can go to my website and find how to sign up for the Owl Box. And I know this isn't the greatest, because I should be posting right now a clickable link in the comments. Let me see if this will work. Um, Try to talk and type at the same time. Okay, and I need to change my little. Oh no, I don't. I don't need earphones at all for this. Where are we going here? Oh, my cats. Yes, I actually only have one cat at the moment, and his name is Carter. And why, naturally, I have a picture of Carter here. Don't I? Oh, come on. Where are you, Carter? There he is. There's Carter. He's working hard, as always, as only a cat can do. Um, he's 17 years old now. And for a cat, that's kind of getting up there, kind of like, like a lot of us, of course. And so he likes to spend a lot of time in front of the fire. And I have to say, he and I get along pretty well because so do I like to spend time in front of the fire. All right. Well, I'm going to say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, whatever it is, wherever you are, midnight in Saudi Arabia, or it is about 2:00 p.m. here in Colorado. Thank you all very much for joining me. I hope I'll see you at the demo on Saturday. And this will be on Facebook and on YouTube as a recording. So if you ever want to watch it again, it'll be there. So thank you very much for joining me. I will see you next time. Or like the VMix guy says, I'll stream you later.